Press, 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 press. Lori lied, she's real pressed. And add another P to that. She's super petty. Who would have thought a lack of vitamin D, or vitamin V if you will, would make her go off like this? Has it been that long, sis? Anyway, let's get into this mess. We are on episode 6, Denials. And denial is a river that a lot of people swam in on this one. So we start the episode out with Tim standing in the window. He's looking out and you hear the gunshot go off. And Victoria and Piper run into the room. They're freaking out. They're screaming hysterically. And I knew it wasn't real because it was just too dramatic and moving too quickly for this show. And as expected, Tim snapped out of it. It was a dream. And then he put the gun away in the drawer and then went to bed. And so when he gets into bed, Victoria's still awake. And she's assuming that he's like stressed and obsessing about Piper and her decision. And Victoria's like, it's going to be okay. We're going to get her back to Durham and she's going to be happy and live a normal life like the rest of us. And Tim was like, I'm not worried about that in the slightest. Now they're talking about two different situations because Tim isn't really explaining what's going on with him to Victoria. And later on in the episode, we kind of realized that it was a good idea for him not to say anything to her. So then we get back to the Ed, and Eddie villa and Kate is on the phone with, I'm guessing, her husband or her children. And she's sitting by the window of her room. And while she's sitting there, she sees Jacqueline walking Valentine out of her room. And she makes this funny face and I almost died. And this is a very expected thing. I was like, it's going to be either Kate or Lori that sees her and they're going to come to conflict about it. So then we get back to the boat and Saxon is waking up and he's recalling pieces of the story from the previous night. And it looked like he didn't get anything that he came for. But Lachlan did. It looked like Lachlan was getting that red light special all through the night. Chloe said she did want that magician. So I guess she got the wand she was looking for. So then we bounce back over to Belinda's villa. And she is laying there with her man Pornchai. They were getting some good rest after the night they had. And so much to the point that Zion got there early and walked in on his mom and Pornchai just kind of laying there in the bed. There's a couple of things I liked about this moment. One, I'm excited about Belinda and Pornchai. But then two, I like the fact that Zion didn't act weird about his mama getting what pretty much brought him into this world. He was like, you need a minute? He was actually just all smiles. And I was like, oh, so you really happy to come see your mama. That's what's up. So then Gaytuk is coming to his shift at the guardhouse and Pilek is walking out. And he was like, is there a problem, Pilek? And Pilek was like, the new gun. And Gaytuk's heart just sank because he just knew that the gun was gone. And he was like, I'm just going to take you out to learn how to shoot it today. Be ready after your shift, okay? And Gaytuk was like, oh, okay, cool. And I was like, okay, Gaytuk, now the ball is in your court. You got to get the gun back. You going to barbecue a mildew, baby. So then we get back to the boat and Gary's mad because Chloe and them took the boat without him. And she was like, I invited you though. And you said you couldn't come. And he was like, well, you always doing stuff without me. Now, my thing is, and this is real life stuff, partners have to allow their significant others freedom. Otherwise, people start resenting you. I mean, some of y'all got control issues. Maybe y'all need to work that out in therapy. You got all this money for a boat and a beautiful home and all this other kind of stuff and lavish trips, baby. Take a trip to that therapist. Work on your own issues because why are you having all these feelings? His feelings in this moment were not wrong, though, because she was wilding last night. And she was telling Chelsea that she thinks he's going to break up with her because he thinks she slept with one of the brothers. And Chelsea was like, but did you, though? And she was like, no. I hooked up with both of them, girl. And I guess hooking up means different things to different people because Saxon's thoughts were like him just making out with her, like kissing her and stuff. I didn't think he went all the way with her. But if she counts that as hooking up, then I count it as hooking up. And then Saxon pops up on the deck and he's walking with a limp, sort of like he had some other action going on last night, which I was like, I hope that's not where the storyline is going because I don't want it. So he sits down and then Lachlan comes up to the deck. And when Lachlan gets there, that's when more of the memory started pouring in on Saxon. Now, initially, I thought it seemed like Saxon was just having a, oops, there goes my shirt up over my head. Oh my. Thought that was the moment he was having. But it turned out that it was the handiwork, literally, of the demon twink Lachlan. And I was like, oh no. And Lachlan was saying he didn't remember anything from last night, but that face in that memory would suggest otherwise. Like, was he possessed or something? This isn't the first time he switched his face from a smile to a maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I'm wrong kind of face in the middle of an uncomfortable situation for a sibling. Because remember when like Saxon was making fun of Piper with that asexual kind of comment and he was laughing a little bit when he was teasing her, but then Lachlan switched his face to, oh, I'm not supposed to be laughing at her like that. I mean, it sounded like Lachlan's fighting some demons. Remember a couple of episodes where he was talking to Saxon on the boat? And he was like, what if this life is a big test just to see if we can become better people? And Saxon was like, what? No. See, your brother was trying to ask you for some advice, and you were trying to influence him to be a Saxon in Lachlan's skin, which does not work. You should have let that man be a Buddhist with Piper. Because absolutely not. Now, Saxon keeps saying that they blacked out, but he's definitely in denial as to what happened. He wasn't blacked out enough because he remembers it. That just happened to not be the time that he expected to have with his little brother on that trip. Saxon is disgusted with Lachlan as well as himself, probably because if you look at both his face and that reaction in the memory, it appears as though he arrived at his destination, which there's nothing wrong with that, but the fact that your brother is not only in charge of the GPS and he's the driver is the problem. So with all that madness in his brain, Saxon got up because he felt sick, and he went down to that room and threw all of it into that toilet. And the reason why I think he's disgusted with himself is because he might have enjoyed that a little bit, because he wasn't so incapacitated that he couldn't just push his brother's hands off of him. His brother is smaller than him. He is way stronger. This man allowed him to do it because he knows exactly which hand belongs to him, and it was not his. So now he has to unpack all of that mentally. So then we over at breakfast, and Kate and Lori are there together. Jacqueline is still at the villa, and Kate decides she wants to spill a little tea. And she was like, so, I think there was a little sleepover last night. And she told her about Valentine. And she said, yeah, he was coming out of Jacqueline's room. I saw him. And you could tell that hurt Lori a little bit. And while Jacqueline is just sleeping in La La Land, guess who calls her? If you guessed Harrison, her husband, then you guessed correctly. And he was like, hey, my phone died on the set. It was a crazy day or whatever. And honestly, I assumed that it was something like his phone dying or something like that. Something very simple. It was just a day. It wasn't like he stopped talking to you for like 2 weeks already. Like, you should be able to go without your partner for like a day. And I think Jacqueline overreacted, thought she wasn't going to get the attention she needed. Maybe she caught this man cheating on her before and assumed that that's what he was doing because she said he was MIA and not answering the phone last time. So maybe there's not such a great situation at home. And so that's why she acted out last night and slept with Valentine. So then we bounce back to the table where Lori is talking to Kate, and she said, Jacqueline has not changed a bit. She practically was pushing this man onto me while all along she wanted him. And then we pop back over to Jacqueline's room, and Harrison is just like, I want you so bad right now, girl. And he was like, do you miss me? And she's like, of course I do. I said, shut up, girl. You know, it's something about when somebody cheats, the partners are always like ready to get it in right after. Like, does infidelity have a good like smell to it or something? Cause it sounds irresistible. So we get back to the table, Lori is still going. She was like, she is an aging actress and starving for male attention. You saw how she was up under all those men last night. And I mean, honestly, a lot of people do this in real life. You know, we're afraid of getting older and vanishing because we've aged and a lot of people don't see us anymore. And for somebody like Jacqueline, who has been in the limelight and is used to so much attention, when you start getting less of it, you start acting different. Doesn't change the fact that you're not supposed to cheat on your husband, but it is what it is. The look on Kate's face, she was like, I immediately regret this decision. She's like, girl, I didn't think you was going to care about it this much. I thought you was just going to think it was funny and laugh. And Lori lied, of course, because she was like, it is funny. I am laughing. She only gave one ha at that.
Yeah, I'm laughing. It's funny. Ha!
You could tell she was pressed for sure. And then Valentine shows up, and he's asking if they enjoyed the night. And Kate was like, oh, I loved it. Now, poor Vlad, because he done been through a lot. I'm with you when you're right, sis. And Lori couldn't even look at him. She done canceled all the little plans that they had going on for the fight. Told that man, we just gonna stick around the hotel tonight, okay? And then we get over to breakfast with Zion and Belinda. And Belinda was like, I don't even know how this happened. And Zion, again, not being weird, was like, Ma, I'm happy for you. He was like, I'm glad to see you getting a little something, something. And he said, honestly, I feel like I'm the only one not getting anything. And she said, listen, I know you're grown, but I'm still your mama, and I don't want to hear that shit. And Zion was like, for real though, it seems like all I do is study. And Belinda was like, first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the woman. And at first I thought she was going to end it with, keep your eyes on the final hour. But then I was like, that is not what she's doing. Apparently she was quoting Scarface. And Zion picked up on it and said, so you quoting Scarface? You getting gangsta on me now? And Belinda was like, you got to get gangsta around here. And he was like, what does that mean? She was like, I'll tell you later. He said, no, you could tell me right now. She said, I'll tell you later. She gave him that mama look. And the reason why she did that is because, punk ass Fabian was walking up, just scanning and grinning. Had the nerve to ask her if she was feeling better after last night. And she was like, not really. And he didn't even follow up with that. Instead, he decided he was going to invite her to his performance. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm out here singing, girl." And he was like, "I'm a little nervous." And then he lingered there way too long. She was like, I'll try to make it." And then he stayed there a little bit longer. She was like, "Break a leg. Actually, break both of them." And I was like, "Boy, if you don't get away from this table, we're going to have to squabble. You acting like you don't see Zion sitting here. That man got muscles for a reason." And then we get back to the Ratliff Villa, and Saxon and Lachlan show up, and Victoria was like, "Y'all look hungover, but y'all need to hear this news real quick." And she was like, "Your sister doesn't have a thesis. We are actually here because she wants to study under some guru. So Tim and I are going to go check it out to make sure it's not some cult." And Saxon was like, "What? You want to stay in Thailand?" And Piper was like, "What is it to you? What do you even care?" And Saxon was like, "Because you're my little sister and I don't want you wasting your life." And that's the first time this season that I heard him sound like he actually cared about her. Maybe he's trying to replace Lachlan as the new favorite sibling because he don't want to deal with that man no more. And Lachlan actually chimed in on her behalf. He was like, "I think it'll be a good experience." And Saxon was looking at that man already as sus. He wasn't really trying to hear anything that Lachlan had to say. He turned on that blender to make one of those little shakes or whatever. And Victoria was not having it. She just couldn't deal. She was already mad at one of the children for lying about the thesis. Then the other one's making all this noise. She was just upset with everything. She was like, "Tim, come on." But actually, she called that man Timothy. So it sounded like she was mad at everybody. And then Piper was like, "Hey, Lachlan, could you come to the monastery with us?" And he was like, "Sure, let me just get my clothes changed or whatever." And then he told Saxon, "Hey, I'll see you later, bruh." Saxon couldn't even look at that man. And honestly, he had to do one thing at a time because he was still fighting for his life because he was woofing down that shake, but he was barely keeping it down because those thoughts were still there. And it looked like everything was about to come back up. So then Chloe and Gary are over at the pool, and Chloe is trying to be all touchy with Gary, and Gary moves away from him. He said, "You slept with one of those brothers, didn't you? Which one was it?" He was like, "Tell me what you did." And she tried to deny it, but he could tell that she was lying. And he was like, "Just tell me what you did." It's kind of weird when people ask how it was, unless that's the thing that you're into. Like when somebody else is dealing with your partner, generally asking that question is going to go down the wrong path because a lot of people don't feel that they could be bested in bed. And when you tell a man that, oh my gosh, like I said, unless he's into that, it's probably not a good idea to have that conversation. And she kept trying to deny it, but eventually she was like, "Is that what you want?" And he was like, "Bring them over tonight." He was like, "I need to deal with something and I need your help." Had Gary and Chloe been married, I think she would have already taken this man out because she already said, "I don't want to lose this lifestyle." When she was on the boat with Chelsea, she was like, "I can't start over. I don't want to deal with that. This is a really good life." So she's going to do whatever Gary tells her to do in order for Gary to keep her fine ass in Gucci and gold. So moving along to Belinda and Pornchai having a conversation, and Pornchai was like, "How's everything with your son?" And she was like, "He probably gonna hold it against me for the rest of my life, but I got stuff on him too, so it's okay." And then Pornchai was very apologetic, and she was like, "Don't apologize now. I wanted you to stay tonight." And Pornchai was like, "Remember you said you had a dream of having your own business, your own spa?" He said, "I was thinking, that's something we could actually do together. And if we did it in Thailand, it would actually be a lot easier." And her response was, "That is still a dream." But the look on her face made it sound like she really didn't want to stay in Thailand. Meanwhile, Pornchai's over there checking her out while he talking to the clients. It sounds like Pornchai done got a taste of that sweet, sweet nectar, that brown sugar, and done got attached. Meanwhile, Belinda is over here mulling over some other things. She's probably like, "Now what did I sleep my way into?" So then we get to lunch over here with Rick and Satala, and he's lying about his director friend saying that he'd been checking out her films, and she was like, "Which ones? They're not very good." And that makes me think of the Boondock scene where Usher was talking to one of the fans, and she was like, "I've seen all your movies." And he was like, "Even Light It Up? My mama ain't even see Light It Up. And she's my manager." And she was like, "I love Light It Up. I named my dog Light It Up." It was just really funny. I feel like Rick was freestyling this conversation because he was just over here like, "Yeah, he wants to do this very intimate kind of role for you, and it's going to be about your kind of life. So he wants to see you in your natural habitat. So we want to meet at your house." And he said, "We don't want to disturb you. We just want to come and observe you in your natural habitat. And then we can have a quick drink and then we can leave because we know that your husband's there and he's sick." So then we get to the monastery and Piper and her family are there. She said, "Wait here while I go talk to him." So she went in and talked to him. She showed him all kinds of love and just said, "I really respect what you've done. You've gotten me through a lot of rough times. I'm a bit lost. The things that my family wants, I have no desire for those things. They're pointless, essentially. But I want to do this year program with you." And she said, "I'll be here in the summer." And she said, "I just want you to set my family's minds at ease." And he said, yeah, bring him in. I'll talk to your mama now. So she goes out to get her parents, and Victoria cannot be found at the moment because she done decided to take her own little special tour. And Tim was like, well, I'm here. She wanted me to talk to him anyway, so I'll go in. And that was the best thing that could have happened for Tim because he got to go in there and talk to the guru one-on-one. And without this kind of questioning from Victoria, she would have interrupted everything being loud and stuff. So then we get over here to Gaytuck, who is standing outside the Ratliff Villa like a Jehovah's Witness waiting to pass out one of those Watchtower booklets. Shout out to them. Them folks are very consistent. So then Mook creeped up behind him and startled him a little bit. And she was like, what are you doing over here? And he made some BS answer up, and she followed up about the date tonight, though. Put a little battery in his back to help him do whatever he needed to do to make this day go right. And he told her that he and Pelek were going to go to the range because they gave him a gun. And then she got really excited. Even gave that man a little shoulder action. So he really had to step it up. So down at the pool, Saxon is obviously flustered, and he sits down next to Chelsea, and she was like, are you okay? You look kind of freaked out. And he blamed it on the serotonin levels being low, which it could have been part of the story, but no, sir. And he was like, I just don't understand. Why wouldn't you sleep with me? And she was like, because I have a boyfriend and he's my soulmate. And he was like, what does that even mean? And she said, when you're connected to somebody on a spiritual level, cheap sex just won't cut it. And she pretty much told that man, you are soulless and you're sad. She broke that man's pride and ego in one little sentence. And this came after probably the worst night of his life. To be told that you have nothing to offer, you have no intrigue, baby, he gonna cry in the car. Listen, if you ever casting for Kill Bill Volume 3 or something like that, call Chelsea up because baby girl don't even need a Hattori Hanzo. She will slice you with these words, baby. So then we get back over here to the guru with Tim. And Tim is trying to get a better understanding as to why Piper even wants to do it. And the guru is like, people come from your country all the time that is pretty much kind of spiritually devoid. They don't have this connection to nature, their family, the spirit, and essentially they're trying to find something. He said a lot of times we're chasing things like money and pleasure, but we're trying to avoid pain, so we run to the pleasure. He said, but you can't outrun pain. And Tim was like, oh, okay. I pick up what you're putting down. And the only reason why I think Tim is actually able to receive this is because of what he has gone through since he's been in Thailand. After hearing all that news and about loss and different things like that and considering ending it all, I think he has a new perspective. So he's in a different place mentally. So the guru is saying stuff that's landing like perfectly for him. Tim from episode 1 would have ate this man up. That dude was too full of pride. Like, he got humbled by his lawyer and the situation he finds himself in. So he's not so ego driven at the moment. And then Tim was like, I have one more question. What do you think happens when you die? And the guru was like, that's a great question. And he gave a great metaphor about being one droplet when you're born, one droplet of water flying upwards, and you're separated from that one giant consciousness, which is like the ocean. And then he says, as you get older and you eventually die, you descend back into that ocean of one consciousness. You are no longer suffering. You're no longer separated. Death is like a happy return, like coming home. The guru was dropping gems on Tim the whole time. So shout out to Gaytuck because my man finally grew a pair and did a little B&E. He did a little breaking and entering on the Ratliff Villa. He was making sure he found that weapon. It was like he evolved as a Pokemon. Now he's on the level 2. He's on B&E. So over by the pool, Lori is talking to Kate and she said, I have to say something. And Kate was like, girl, why? And Lori was like, it seems kind of fake not to say anything. And Kate was like, well, one person's fake is another person's good manners, which I've seen a lot of times growing up in the South. You got to think about it. Kate is down in Texas. Meanwhile, Lori is living in New York, and the New Yorkers are very different with their communication skills. Sometimes they sound aggressive and they're not even mad. They just sound like that. And I'm actually siding with Kate on this one because y'all have been trash talking and been fake this whole time with those little convos on the side. So why not fake it for the rest of the trip like y'all been doing? But I know why. Because that ego is bruised. You're mad because you got CB by your girl and you thought you were going to bag Valentine and he decided he was going to get the girl with more of a name and a status in Hollywood. You couldn't compete with that. And it's nothing wrong with being an attorney, but you got to think about it. When he brags and tells his friends who he got with, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, you slept with an actress? He's going to be like, yeah, I'm that guy. Now, originally, I thought it was just Kate and Lori at the pool, just like it was at breakfast. And Jacqueline was laying over there to the side. Obviously, that was a camera trick because we didn't see her in the foreground. But when she pulled that hat off her head and said, what are y'all talking about? I lost it. I was like, I know you ain't doing this in her face, but keep going. And I'm glad they did because Kate was trying to like smooth it out and be like, oh, we just talk about. Lori went ahead and cut that off and was like, girl, we know about Valentine. And of course, Jacqueline tried to play dumb, but Lori stayed on her head, did not let up. She was like, we know he stayed the night. How was it? And Jacqueline tried to play it off and pretend like nothing happened. And then Lori laid back real quick. She was like, you so funny. And Jacqueline was like,
what do you mean by that?
And Lori was like, girl, I mean, it's fine. Are you and Harrison in an open relationship or something? And Jacqueline was like, no. And then Lori was like, well, you said what happens in Thailand stays in Thailand, so it's all good. And then at that moment, Jacqueline was just absolutely pissed. She said, I told you, nothing happened. And Lori was like, now, girl, get real. I need a drink. And she was like, give me 3 margaritas, Jackie face getting red. And then Lori was like, why did you push him on me so hard if you really wanted him for yourself? And then Jacqueline was like, are you serious? You're obviously mad at me about something. Otherwise, you wouldn't be coming at me like this. And Lori just had to implicate Kate in this situation. She was like, well, when Kate said she saw him coming out your room this morning, and Kate's eyes looked at her like,
no, you didn't. Wait a minute. No, you didn't.
And then Lori was like, you did? It was absolutely hilarious, but that's how you never get tea from me again. I mean, the friendship was probably already over, but now like the funk of a skunk, that mess done got sprayed everywhere. And Lori was like, I find it funny that we are still the same people that we were in the 10th grade. Like nobody's making any changes. And we got to talk to the doll because y'all are in y'all's 40s now. And the fact that you went all the way back to high school lets me know that there's something back there, something back yonder that y'all need to ponder. Like, what do you need to unpack and get off your chest? Did she pull a salt and pepper and take your man? Now I want to know what happened. Because for you to go all scorched earth for somebody like Valentine, a guy that you just met this week, it's really got to be something else that's underneath the surface here. So then Tim comes out after having that convo with the guru, and Victoria's like, so what did you think? And Tim was like, I like him. He seemed pretty legit. Now, Victoria did not have that on her bingo card. And she said, I should have come in there with you. And Victoria probably expected him to just take her side, but she doesn't realize the transformation that he's taken over the past couple of days and how that's informing his decision making now. And so Victoria was like, you know what? I will accept this. I will keep my mouth shut rather. If Piper stays here one night and likes it, you will have my support. And Piper was like, bet. Let me just make sure they got room for me to stay here. And Victoria was like, oh, they do. Because in my little self-guided tour, I saw their meager accommodations and it looked grim. And then Lachlan walked over to Piper and he said, you know what? I'll stay with you. Which was nice, but you still got some stuff you got to work through. So we head back over to Bangkok and Rick is talking to Frank and he's getting them all up to speed on everything that's going on. And Frank was like, that was one crazy story. I was like, bruh, you know about crazy stories. Don't play in his face like that. And Frank was like, he's on a different path now. And Rick said, hey, it won't get messy. And Frank was like, now lie again because you needed a gun for something. He's like, you gonna kill him, right? And Rick was like, I'll do you a solid. I won't even bring it, but I do need your help. So then we get back over to the Ratliff Villa where Gaytuck is searching high and low trying to find the gun. And he eventually does. He got the blicky back just in enough time for the Ratliffs to not catch him. And the beauty of this scene is he started walking. At first he looked like a little startled, but then he thought about it. Act like you're supposed to be here, baby. He put a little sauce on that walk, started moving, and he walked past the Ratliffs in the same way that Tim walked past him at that guardhouse when he stole the gun in the first place. So at this point, I'm going to call him Gaytuck the Gangster. Sort of like Tyler the Creator, A Tribe Called Quest, or a pimp named Slickback. My man earned that. So then he gets back to the guardhouse and Pilek is looking for the gun. He said the gun was missing, and then Gaytuck was like, no, it's not. It's right here. And he pulled it out. And Pilek was like, man, I thought it was stolen. And I'm like, this sounds like a common thing for y'all. Like, how often do security guards' guns get stolen? Why is that your first thought? And he said, you shouldn't be walking around with this gun if you don't know how to use it. And I'm with you when you're right, Pilek. So they headed over to the range. Meanwhile, Victoria's giving Tim an earful talking about why would you encourage our daughter to live in a monastery? And Tim was like, it'll be a good experience for her. And Victoria was like, we want her to be afraid of poverty like everyone else we know so she can make great decisions. Acting like rich people don't make poor decisions every day. Literally, Tim's decision to work with Kenny Wynn was probably based on a fear of poverty and greed. Now they're on the brink of financial ruin and he's the only one that knows. And with good reason, because what Victoria said in this scene, it made a lot of stuff clear. Tim was like, we want our kids to be tough, don't we? Resilient. What if we lost everything? And then Victoria was like, we're not going to lose everything. But if we did, I don't know if I would want to live. Remember when I was talking about that meaning of her dream walking into that tsunami? One of the things that could have meant was her seeing the storm coming to her family and not really wanting to face the embarrassment and the loss. And she was embracing death. Here we are with her thought process. Had Tim told her about this situation, she probably would have asked to borrow the gun or find the Thailand version of lorazepam or something similar where it would just allow her to take a lot of them. Because the energy she's giving in this conversation that they're having right now lets me know that she would be one of those people that would just give up. She would be like, I just wanna sleep forever, never see tomorrow. And Tim was like, why would you say that? And Victoria said, at this big age, I don't think I'm meant to live an uncomfortable life. And she was like, I don't think I was ever built for it. That just added 5 more pounds to Tim's stress level. The man gonna have a heart attack. He ain't gotta worry about getting shot. So we back poolside, and Chloe decides to join Saxon and Chelsea. And she says, hey, Saxon, Gary knows about you. And Saxon was like, how does he know that? And she was like, I told him. She said, I can't just lie to his face like that. And I was like, Heifer, you been lying. And she was like, you should come to the house. You know, Gary really wasn't that mad. He seemed like he was kind of turned on by it. And Chelsea was like, ooh, maybe he wants a threesome. I do not agree with Chelsea. Now, he could be a cuck, but I don't know enough about Gary Gregg to say that. What I do know is this gathering is a cover-up for something nefarious that's about to happen. And then Chelsea was like, you've never had a threesome before? And Saxon was like, yeah, I've had a threesome before, just not with another guy. And then Chelsea chimed in and she was like, well, what about last night? He was like, that wasn't no threesome. Like, that's just my little brother. And she was like, yeah, but y'all made out. And he was like, that was a joke though. And she was like, what part? And then he tried to flip it and say, y'all made us do it. And I'm like, sir, you can come up with any excuse you want to, but nobody made you make out. But then Chloe came back and said, I didn't force him to play with your joystick like that. And Saxon was like, wait, that didn't happen. Now, if that really didn't happen, why are you treating your brother like this? You clearly remember what happened. And Chelsea's face when he said he didn't remember it was just priceless. So then he tried to pull the I blacked out card again. And Chloe was like, I was not though. I got that magic wand from your brother, and he hit you with that Expelliarmus and put you on your back, made your little soldiers waddy that wazi. I kid you not. And then he tried to blame the drugs. He was like, what did you give us? And Chelsea said exactly what I was thinking. She was like, there is no drug in this world that would make me do that with my siblings. He clearly had deep regrets. And I thought the previous episode that he would either be turned on by this or deeply disgusted. I guess we see what path he chose. So maybe he isn't closeted after all. I think he might have been a little bit curious because he didn't push his brother's hand away. It probably would have been different for Saxon had it been like a friend or maybe a fraternity brother or something like that. But this situation went too far because it was his brother. And he was sweating more than usual this time because he was feeling that embarrassment. He was on the hot seat. And this is the first time I actually feel bad for Saxon. Because had he not taken the drugs, maybe he would have been in more control of himself and not let his inner thoughts win. And this is why the Asian doll said she was sober now because it's easy to get out of control. So Ed and Eddie get back to the villa, and Lori still got that petty mode turned up loud. Talking about, I thought we were going to the movie Tight Fight tonight. And Kate had to remind her, hey, you told Valentine we weren't coming. And then she looked clean at Jacqueline and said, Valentine will be there, girl. And Jacqueline was just done with her. She was like, girl, take the quickest flight to hell. And then walked off. And Kate was like, Lori, why are you antagonizing her? And then Lori was like, I'm not like you. Sometimes I just have to be honest. That's cool and all, but make sure you're looking at the ma'am in the mirror with that honesty because you clearly are only going in on the other girls while overlooking the choices you've made. So Kate felt and heard that shot and walked off as well. And even after that disrespect from Lori, Kate tried to go in and defend her for Jacqueline. She was like, you know that girl is drunk. And then Jacqueline was like, I'm going to go ahead and stop you right there. You know how much gossip I have to deal with on a regular basis? It hurts more having to deal with this from friends that I'm supposed to be able to trust talking behind my back. She said it's really depressing. And Kate just let her walk off. Now, Jacqueline, you can fuel a full fleet of cars with that foolishness you just said. Now, if y'all were such good friends, you would have been honest about Valentine from the jump. But you decided to protect the facade of a happy marriage even after you knew you were caught. See, I couldn't have been one of those friends because I would have been like, child, please. It's entirely too many curtainless windows around here for you to be lying like that. If we're your real friends, why are you lying to our faces? Neither of us have the initials of Tamara Marie Zimmer, so I don't know why you treating us like this. And if I were Kate, I would have been like, and another thing. We've been talking about each other this whole time. Remember Trumpgate? I bet you're going to pretend like you don't. But I woke up from my slumber. I came out. I saw y'all chitting and chatting. What was that conversation about? I know you weren't out here praying or meditating because both you hussies is heathens. So miss me with all this woe is me conversation. We all in the dirt. And speaking of meditating, we back over at the monastery and Lachlan and Piper are being guided through meditation by the guru. And while they're going through this meditation, the memories start coming back to Lachlan. And this man feels quite uncomfortable after that. And let's just talk about this guru. My man is 3 for 3 right now on helping the rat list figure some stuff out. Maybe we need to slide Victoria and Saxon over there. I'm trying to see something real quick. So we get back over to the range, and Gaytuck is shooting that gun, and he's looking pretty good for a first-timer. Pelek was like, I see you, Gaytuck. Now the question is, do you have what it takes to use it when it's needed? And Gaytuck was like, I believe so. And Pelek was like, really? Now Pelek, you must not know that you're talking about Gaytuck the gangster right now. This man got a date with Mook, and he ready to shoot at any time. He already gave you a confirmed answer. Don't ask again, bruh, cause Buddy got hella heart right now. So then we get to the little walking path, and Belinda's just having a nice little promenade home, being an easy breezy, beautiful cover girl, when Greg popped out of nowhere. Now, Kendrick did say sometimes you gotta pop out and show him, but that was sometimes, and this is not one of those times. He's lucky Belinda ain't running that fade. And then he invites her to his house for that party, which I'm sure she would have been the honored guest because he's trying to figure out what she knows about him and if he needs to kill her or if he needs to bribe her. Now, my thing is, why would you invite a stranger to your house that you quote unquote don't know besides that first interaction where you said, I'm not Greg? So you denied who you actually were to her face, but you expect her to trust you enough to come to your house? Sir, make that make sense. Of course she declined. And then he was like, we need to talk. You could come by my house anytime. I'm the house on the hill. You can't even call this a red flag. It's more of like the fabric, the full piece of fabric that they cut the flags out of. You might as well just keep it all intact because there's too many of them to count. Because why is he near her villa? Apparently, Fabian just told him where to find her, which means that heifer can't be trusted either. Like, you didn't even give him my number first so he could call before he comes, so he don't just pop over out the blue. Now, she was definitely shook, and rightfully so, visibly shaken, and when she gets back to that villa and sees Belinda and Zion swimming in that pool, the terror's just written all over her face. Now, I'm assuming in that moment she told Zion what was going on. And then we get back to the Ratliff Villa, and Tim is daydreaming yet again about,
yeah, double homicide.
This time it will be Victoria first and then himself second. Now, one isn't a homicide, but you get the point. Essentially, both of them gonna be gone on the same day, especially after that combo that Victoria had with Tim earlier, talking about she wouldn't make it. And when he comes back to reality, Saxon is like, where is everybody? And Tim was like, Victoria's in there napping, and Piper and Lachlan are over there with the monks. And Tim was so fried, he merged their names, because he definitely called them Lockler and Pipeline. Saxon was sharp enough to catch that part. And then Saxon told him about the dinner party invite, and Tim was so down for that. So he was like, I'm gonna go wake up your mama. And so we get back over to Bangkok, and it's the last scene, and Frank and Rick are on the boat. They're going to visit Satala and Jim. And of course, Rick did not tell the truth to Frank. He said I wasn't gonna bring the weapon, but he had that thing on him. So they walk up the stairs past security and all of that. So when they make it to the house, Frank walks up to greet Satala, and you hear her say, this is my husband, Jim. We don't see him, but Rick does. And he cannot move. And he's going to stay stuck there till episode 7 because that's where the episode ends. Now, I personally don't think that he's going to kill Jim, even though he has the gun with him. I'm wondering if he recognizes the man, though, because he didn't say that his mom didn't tell him what he looked like or something like that, or give him a picture of his dad. So he might actually recognize this man, and it might actually be his father. Or Jim could very well be the person he needs to kill. I just don't see it going that way, though. Now, this was a crazy episode. Lines were definitely crossed between Saxon and Lachlan. I thought the line was already crossed at the end of episode 1, but Mike just had to throw a little incest sauce on it, didn't he? And now we're here, and that aftermath is going to be rough for both of them. It'll probably be rougher for Saxon, though, because he's going to have a hard time facing that embarrassment and shame. The women know that he did that. That's not something you could just forget. Now, Lachlan needs to conquer some demons of his own because there's something not right with him internally if he thinks that that's okay to do with his sibling or anybody that kind of really wouldn't give that level of consent to you if they weren't under the influence, because that definitely wasn't the sexual side quest that Saxon wanted to be on. And there's one last point that I want to bring up. I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen with Belinda, Greg, and the hotel kind of situation. Somebody in the comments said that Greg might be a part owner of the hotel. I mean, it is possible. Y'all see that house, and it would make sense why Fabian actually gave him the information to find her to her villa. And even though I don't want to look at him sideways, maybe Pornchai is compromised. One of my coworkers did say it was kind of odd that he offered her that spa situation so quickly. I mean, maybe that's the way that Greg is using him, is to bribe her. And he was like, we can do it in Thailand. Why do I want to stay in Thailand? I'm not from here. It was just all too fast coming from Pornchai. So I'm hoping he's not a bad guy, but you never know. So I think that's a good stopping point for the episode. What did y'all think? Did you notice anything that I missed? Leave a comment below. Please drop a like if you enjoyed the video so you can help me out with Sister Algorithm. Feel free to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to be notified when I drop new content. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.